So how's everyone doing tonight? I hope everyone's had a good day. I'm just on my way home. I thought that tonight what I'd talk about is communication systems for motorbikes. This is something that I only got into recently. Been playing about with now for probably maybe 4 or 5 months, and it's been an interesting experience. So I'll give you a rundown on how my communication experience started, what I've used, what I think of it all. So my first communicator was a Chinese Freedcon AliExpress Chinese wonder kind of set, which consisted of 2 headsets, one which was the main Bluetooth headset, and a second one which was designed to go into a second wired helmet where we had to have a wire between yourself and the rider behind, and I used that between myself and my son, who was on the back of my bike, so he could communicate with me as we were riding along. And it was okay. It's clear and everything. I mean, the sound quality and everything's good, but the problem is, of course, is that it's corded. And my experience has been that the corded stuff it's a pain in the neck trying to get it plugged in once you've got your gloves and things on was hopeless. Trying to get him on the bike and get plugged in, or anyone else on the bike, trying to get plugged in together was hopeless. So you pretty much had to sit on the bike, take your gloves off, muck around, take your helmet off, get yourself plugged in, and it was just a headache, to be honest. Just a headache that probably 90% of us could deal without. So if you get a system, whether it's a Chinese system or a Sena system or whatever system it is you want to buy, just make sure that you buy wireless, because it's so much better. It's so much better. So that would be my first recommendation. Now, as far as wireless quality was, we wired it with a Sena 20S model, and line of sight it was fine. It was good for about maybe 500 meters line of sight. So provided you were riding together a line of sight, it was fine once you were connected. If you got out of line of sight for a limited amount of time, for a few seconds, it seemed to be okay and it would reconnect. If you got disconnected from each other, like we ride over the Rimataka Hills here, and it was hopeless. Once you're around the hills, it was just totally useless, basically. So it was an interesting experience. So the thing is that if you get around the hills, if you get out of sight, those systems are pretty much useless. They just don't work. And the worst part of it was that they don't repair very nicely. So if the second rider that's out of your range comes back into range, it won't just automatically repair and connect back up nicely. It just doesn't want to work properly like that, which is just a pain in the neck. So that was really annoying, really annoying. So what I would say is that you're better off spending a little bit more money and getting a better system. The next systems that we tried were the one that I'm using now. It's a 10C, and we also used the Sena 10. I can't remember what it is. Mine's a 10C one. Mine's got the camera and everything in it. The other is the basic module. It's still a 10 series, but it doesn't have a camera in it. And they're pretty good. Like communication wise, pretty good, pretty clear. Definitely better than the Chinese one. Definitely better at repairing. So if you get out of range and you come back into range again, about, I don't know, maybe 60% of the time it will just automatically repair. Every now and again it kind of mucks around and it kind of searches for the other unit and can't find it, and then you have to do kind of like a manual repairing. But generally they're pretty good. Range, best part of a kilometre, maybe 800 meters, something like that. The biggest problem with it was really comes down to not so much the range, but when you get in the hills. So if you get in a lot of hills with one of those, it's a pain in the neck. It's just over. But the good thing, of course, is that it will repair. So if you get in the hills and it's disconnects itself, generally most of the time it will repair, but the reception's not so good in the hills. Once you're out of sight, you've got buildings between you, something like that, you can't really communicate properly or effectively. Not so good. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience with it. Now, saying all of that, I have had a play with with slightly better system. I've had a play with I think a 30. I think it's called a 30 something or other. But that's sort of in the more upper range, and they have different levels, if you like, where the range gets better on the better headsets, but you pay a lot more for them. And the very latest one apparently has a different type of meshing, where the way that it meshes group communications is better, and the way it reconnects is much better. So if someone drops out of the communication, they'll kind of come back into the communication automatically, just a whole lot more easily. People muck around so much here, it's ridiculous. So yeah, so if you really want a good system, you're far better off. If you've got the money, you can afford to spend the money, I would say spend the money on the better systems. Go to a 20 or a 30, and spend as much as you can, because the reconnection and the range is just far superior. It's definitely better. It's definitely better than what I've got, and the reconnection rate is much higher. So that's been my experience with it. I was budget. And the other thing is I wanted something with a camera. Now the other thing you can get with Sena is they have a thing called a prism camera. So if you want something where you can talk and you can communicate and you can also record your conversations on the fly with your camera footage, the 10C is pretty good for that. Visually it's not as good as other action cameras. It's only a 1080p camera, and it's not the sharpest camera in the shop, but it's reasonable. It's you'll see the footage here anyway. I mean, it's not too bad, but it's definitely not as good as my Sony and my other cameras. Definitely not as good as a GoPro. And that's apparently people's complaint with the Prism camera. So the Prism, what that is, the Sena Prism, that's a fully Bluetooth camera that's designed to talk to a Sena headset, and it's separate to your helmet. So in lots of ways that's a better system, because you can connect it up to your bike's battery and have it going consistently, recording footage and things like that. So it's probably not a bad way to go if you want to be able to record sound and video and do everything. But if you're really looking for really good high quality footage from a camera, this camera is not it. You know, this is acceptable to, I guess, I don't know, 50% of people, and to the other people who just want that really nice crisp clean footage, they wouldn't accept this kind of footage. It just wouldn't really be good enough. So yeah, that's my little spiel on communication systems. I think I've probably covered 90% of it. If there's anything else that you can think of that I haven't covered here, feel free to ask. I could probably answer most of it. Anyway, safe riding. I'm riding in the stupid rush hour traffic here, which is not much fun, as you can see. Need to go for a decent ride. The weather's been so rubbish here. The wind's only just starting to calm down today. We had, you know, over 100 km/h winds today, so there was no chance of going riding. Maybe tomorrow. Anyway, stay safe guys, shiny side up. Talk soon.